In this video, I'm going to show you the one thing you're doing that's stopping your spiritual growth, and I'm going to give you 4 steps to having a spiritual growth spurt, otherwise known as a breakthrough. These are the exact 4 steps that I learned at 2 o'clock one morning when I had a breakdown, sobbing on my bathroom floor after my then boyfriend had fallen in love with another woman, almost half my age. It was a day that I learned that breakdowns are often doorways to our breakthroughs. So let me tell you the story. Over a decade ago, my then boyfriend and I were in the middle of a long and painful breakup. He had fallen in love with another woman that he had been seeing on the side. And the problem is that, well, aside from that, the problem is that we were living together and our finances were enmeshed together. We had a business and a home together, and we relied on both our incomes to afford the mortgage and pay the bills. So until we could further figure out our finances to separate and how we could each afford to live on our own again, I moved into the guest bedroom of our house, and his new girlfriend moved into our master bedroom. This is before I learned to speak up for myself and set boundaries. Okay, so during this crazy, difficult time where we all lived together, I told myself that I was being a good spiritual person for accepting them with love and grace instead of anger and spite. I told myself that I have to forgive and forget and be the bigger person. And I told myself that I'm being an enlightened, loving spiritual soul by accepting this situation. I told myself many things, but what I didn't tell myself during that time was the one thing that mattered most. It was the one thing that I needed to hear the most. Because you see, the guest bedroom shared a wall with the master bedroom. And even though I deliberately put the bed furthest away from the shared wall, I could still hear their muffled moaning through the wall. I'm talking sex sounds if you don't get it. All right. So one night around 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd had enough. And despite all the things that I told myself to justify my circumstances, I ran to the bathroom and I broke down. I fell to my knees, I fell on the floor, I curled over with my forehead touching the cold floor tiles. I held my hands over my mouth as I cried. I didn't want them to know that they'd finally broken me. But looking back now, it wasn't about them knowing I was broken. It was that I didn't want me to know that I was finally broken. I couldn't admit it. After all, I'm a strong spiritual person and I can transcend any life situation with love and light. But in a moment of pure grace, as I stood up, I caught a flash of my reflection in the mirror and I saw someone staring back with red, tired, and swollen eyes. And I realized in that moment, I had been broken for a long time. My boyfriend hadn't cheated on me. I was cheating on myself. My boyfriend hadn't abandoned me. I had abandoned myself. My boyfriend hadn't broken his promise to me. I had broken my promise to myself. My life wasn't in pieces because of what they did to me. It was in pieces because of what I did to myself. I had been lying about how I really felt, which was a jumble of anger, bitterness, resentment, jealousy, spite, unworthiness, disappointment, hurt, all of those things. It was just a big jumble of those things. And I was lying because I had this belief that spiritually enlightened people don't feel the negative, bad, petty, dark, low vibration feelings. Spiritually enlightened people only feel love and light and peace. Spiritually enlightened people forgive and they let go and they surrender and they trust. They understand that everyone is on their own journey and they don't judge, condemn, or criticize. It's all love and light. And because I believed this to be true, and I believed that I was a good spiritual person, I denied any thoughts and feelings that didn't fit within that belief structure, even when they were staring me in the face. So I looked in the mirror in that one moment. I caught a glimpse of the truth, and I realized that I was the liar. I was the cheater. I was the one being unfaithful to myself. I had been cheating on myself in the name of spirituality, hiding my true feelings behind a facade of enlightenment. This is the one thing that many spiritual seekers are doing that's actually blocking them from growing. It's keeping them stuck and not able to grow and evolve and expand, not allowing themselves to feel what they're really feeling deep down in the shadowy corners of themselves because they think it's unspiritual to feel those base emotions. And that's keeping us stuck in our facade of spirituality and love and light. So once I faced that, once I stopped denying how I really felt, and I started to own my anger and pain and darkness, that was when the real growth began. And I had been so busy trying not to look at the dark parts of me that I couldn't see how much darkness I was creating on my own. So this realization allowed me to stop being dismissive and dishonest with myself. Don't you hate when people are dismissive about your emotions? Well, we're doing the same thing when we dismiss our own emotions and we're dishonest with ourselves, right? And this gave me room for all of these real feelings and real thoughts and real energy to surface. And what happened next is really beautiful, though on the surface, it looked quite ugly. I'll tell you what happened. So I went out to dinner with my best friend, and we spent the entire night talking bad about my ex and his new lover. And it felt good. It felt really good. In fact, if you were sitting at the table next to us, you would have heard the most gleefully vindictive, shallow, angry, and bitter words come out of my mouth. And you may have judged me for being unspiritual and unevolved. You might have even thought, wow, this woman is a hateful person. But my friend knew what I was doing, and she was happy to finally see me be real and stop hiding behind the veil of enlightenment and spirituality. It felt good to be real, even if that realness meant that I was not being loving to them, right? The truth is, I was being loving to myself. I was finally allowing myself to feel exactly as I felt in the moment. And the words coming out of my mouth were mean and hateful toward my ex and his partner, but the act itself of allowing myself to express mean and hateful was a loving act toward myself. And this is where a healing begins. And this process can be very painful, but it ultimately put me back in touch with my authenticity, with who I truly am beneath the pretense of being a good spiritual being. So I started to see that all of those ugly parts of myself were just as much a part of me as my love and light. I began to see that I was denying a part of myself in the name of spirituality. So denying our feelings, pain, anger, and darkness, our shadow selves, is not spiritual. It's actually the opposite. It's when we start to face our truth, even if it's uncomfortable, that we begin to grow spiritually. So how do we do this? How can we learn to embrace all aspects of ourselves, even the ugly ones? They're not really ugly. We just judge them as ugly. So here are the 4 steps. 1, you start by honoring all parts of you, and this includes the dark and the light side, right? As well as everything in between. The shadow parts are a part of you, and they're valid, and they deserve your love and acceptance. 2, we make room for all aspects of ourselves by creating a safe space for them. So in my case, I knew that my friend wouldn't judge me, and I felt safe knowing that as ugly as I got, she knew the real beauty of me, and she would hold a loving space for any feelings to pass. I'm not living from my shadow self 24/7, and I didn't hold on to those shadowy emotions long, but I had to go through the shadow to get to the light. And then 3, acknowledge the impermanence of emotions. Know that what you feel in any given moment is not the absolute truth about who you are. Emotions are fleeting, and just because you feel spiteful and angry in this moment doesn't mean that you're a spiteful and angry person. It simply means that you're feeling spite and anger flow through you in this moment. So remember, I always teach emotion is energy in motion. You are not your emotions. What you feel does not make you who you are. Many people hold on to their anger and they won't release it. These are the people who have the types of conversations that I had over dinner with my best friend that night. These are the people who have those types of conversations over and over and over for months and years and even decades. They're never willing to acknowledge their own role in how their life is turning out, and they're always pointing the finger at others. This is not what I'm suggesting here. You don't want to hold on to your shadow emotions. You want to feel and release them like any emotion. And once you do that, they're gone. And then finally, the 4th step is don't forget that self-care and self-love are key when we move into our shadow selves. So you can't explore all the darkness within if you aren't taking good care of yourself on an emotional level. So as I asked of my partner, I now ask only of myself. I have to be with me through thick and thin, through the shadow and the light, and never abandon myself or be unfaithful to myself. It's normal to feel scared and even guilty and ashamed when we venture into our shadow selves. We've been taught from society that those feelings are bad and we need to hide them from public view. For those of us into spiritual development, we're further taught that we should be loving, forgiving, and accepting, while those other denser emotions and feelings are for those who are less evolved and unenlightened, right? We may not be used to exploring the shadow side of ourselves, but it's an important part of our spiritual growth. In fact, the shadow side of us is as valid as any other aspect of us. This is true spirituality. So instead of cheating on ourselves with a facade of good spirituality, we need to be faithful to our true selves and live a genuinely spiritual life by embracing all parts of ourselves. And this is how we grow. This is how we have spiritual breakthroughs, not by denying our shadow, but by embracing it. When we can honor ourselves enough to honor all parts of ourselves, we become more of the authentic self we were meant to be. If you enjoyed this video, I would love if you subscribe to my channel. I'm Tree, and I help you master your energy so you can release your past and create a new and empowered future. If you need personalized help in doing that, I have links in the description for ways in which you can work with me. I also have a self-love course, and the link is in the description there so that you can practice number 4 of what I taught today and always be grounded in your own strength and your own power.